Welcome to Orioles on the Verge. This is Zach Spedden, joined as always by Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens. And this week, leading up to Thanksgiving, we only have one new episode to drop, but it's going to be a pretty packed one as we're going to break down the Orioles coaching staff announcement, along with their decision to break to non-tender Jacob Webb. And we're going to get into Roki Sasaki and whether or not he could be a fit for the Orioles this offseason. All of that is coming up on tonight's episode of Orioles on the Verge, which is brought to you by BetOnline. This Thanksgiving holiday, why not head to the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting, BetOnline. From the earliest odds to in-game live betting, BetOnline provides you with constant, real-time odds and action and the ability to watch the games as they happen. With the largest selection of odds on everything from football, NBA, and college basketball, NHL to UFC, and boxing. Head to the website today to see why BetOnline is America's most trusted site for online wagering. BetOnline, the game starts here. And now, as we like to do at the top of every episode, we want to welcome a new member of our Patreon community. And for that, I will turn it over to Bob.
Yeah, the episode starts here officially because we're talking about the newest patron member, Zach Joyner, also known as Redline Shotgun. Thank you for joining at the AA level. Hope you enjoy the content. And yeah, it's nice to see people signing up even in the off season. Really appreciate that.
Well, as a reminder, we do have our upcoming top 50 prospects countdown, which will be for patrons. We'll also have bonus episodes throughout the offseason. And if you're a member of our Patreon community now, think about giving a Patreon membership to the Orioles fan in your circle of friends or family. And as we gear up for Orioles season, we did have one pretty big announcement last week, which was the Orioles rounding out their major league coaching staff. Actually, in fact, that was announced on Monday. The additions were interesting. Robinson Chirinos, former player, actually only a couple of years removed from his final season, which was with the Orioles in 2022, has been hired as the team's bench coach. The Orioles fine-tuning or overhauling their hitting staff at the major league level. Cody Ashe becomes the hitting coach, with Tommy Joseph taking on the role of assistant hitting coach as he joins the Orioles from the Seattle Mariners, and Sermon Johnson promoted from the minor leagues to become the assistant hitting coordinator / upper-level hitting coordinator. He was not the only person promoted from within the organization, as Buck Britton has been named the major league coach. Now, if you've been listening to this show over the last few years, you know we are big fans of the work that Buck Britton has done in the minor leagues, from leading the Norfolk Tides to the International League Championship in 2023, to the role that he's played in countless players' development over the years, whether it's been Gunnar Henderson, Jordan Westberg, Adley Rutschman, you name them. A lot of Orioles who are key parts of the team now played under Britton at some point during their minor league career. Nico Goodrum, who was on the Tides last year, sang Britton's praises when he was on our show recently. If you haven't had a chance to listen to that interview, go check that out for a little bit more background. But suffice to say, this Britton promotion, I think, has been coming for some time. We've been anxious to see it happen, and now it happens as he takes over as Major League coach. And we'll break down the other additions to the coaching staff, but we want to start with Britton. Nick, what are your thoughts here?
I think we all assumed he was going to get the call. I think it was you who dropped a nugget from Andy Koska in the chat a couple weeks ago, how like Britton's contract was up a couple weeks ago, and we hadn't heard anything. And so I assumed like any day that announcement's going to come, he's going to get some sort of role. They hadn't made the announcement of the bench coach, so I figured that's going to be his position, because clearly if his contract was up and he was being courted by other teams, like he probably would have signed with another team by now. We would have heard something. But yeah, I think it's great. You mentioned the Nico Goodrum interview. Yeah, definitely go back and listen to that, because he was only there for 2-3 months in Norfolk this year, and he spoke glowingly about Britton's impact. Now imagine what guys like Adley and Gunnar and Kerstad and these guys are thinking about Buck Britton when they've been with him for a year or more. Yeah, I think this is good timing. He gets to reunite with some of these younger players, Jackson Holliday, Calzer, Kerstad, like I mentioned. I imagine, hopefully, I figure Kerstad specifically, if they had a pretty close relationship, that would be very beneficial as Kerstad tries to settle into the major leagues this year. Hopefully, we get a full season of play, but Like Britton's going to bring knowledge to whatever that position is. I don't know what major league coach duties entail. Seems very vague, but I just, you get the sense that, maybe Buck Britton can say, look, I know how, I'll pick on Kerstad again. I know how to push his buttons. He's in a slump. He's doing something. I know how to push his buttons. Give me the afternoon. Let me talk to him. Let me get him in the cage. I'll work it out if they've got that type of relationship. He's known these guys for so long. There's a lot of youth on this major league roster with the coaching staff now in terms of like inexperience at the major league level coaching. So I am very curious to see how this is all going to shake out. But yeah, I think this is pretty good. Just another example of the coaches moving up along with the prospects, and they've all had success at every step of the way in the minor leagues. And hopefully that success continues to transition to the major leagues.
Yeah, absolutely love this move. It is interesting that he's major league coach, not the bench coach. I would have thought that those two roles would have been reversed, but I'm sure they have the reasons for that. And they have a plan for how these guys are going to interact. But like Nick said, I mean, Buck has been around long enough that he knows the entire core of this Orioles team, probably even Cedric Mullins. I'm wondering if he even played with him in his playing days before he became a coach. But yeah, absolutely love it. He knows all these guys. They're all comfortable with him. Same with the new assistant hitting coach, Sherman Johnson, which I'm sure we'll get more into. But like the super young core, Mayo, Holiday, these guys like him a lot. They're comfortable with him. And it's like when we had Connor on our show, they might change some coaches around, but it's no fault of the system that they have in place. It's going to be more of the same because it's what got them here, and it's what they're comfortable with, and they're confident in their system, and so am I. So are we. Yeah, Buck being in there is a great call. Would have hated to lose him for nothing with his contract being up. Glad he's on the staff, and hey, now you have the next guy in waiting, so to speak, if Brandon Hyde gets himself into trouble. I know everyone picks on him. I like Brandon Hyde still. I think he'll be around for a while, but the heir apparent is now in the building, and for a while it looked like the guy from the Cubs that was going to come over. I think there was a rumor about that, but nope, we're keeping it in-house. The only guy from outside the organization is Tommy Joseph, assistant hitting coach from the Mariners. So love it. Good stuff.
Yeah, Britton, a long history in the Orioles organization. Of course, he's the brother of former Orioles reliever Zach Britton. In his playing days, Britton was with the Orioles for a while. His first managerial role came with Delmarva in 2018. He moved up to Bowie the following year and would return there in 2021 before leading the Tides in each of the last 3 seasons. He's not the only person, as we mentioned, to get a promotion from the minor league ranks as Sherman Johnson joins this coaching staff. And he'll be part of the Orioles hitting program with Cody Ashley as the hitting coach and Tommy Joseph as the assistant hitting coach. And my impression when I look at this is kind of confirmation of what we've been saying, what a lot of other people have been saying, Connor Newcomb, John Mioli included, which is that maybe the Orioles would make some changes to their staff this offseason, but the approach and the thought process is probably going to be the same. Maybe just different people delivering that message. And I'll start with Sherman Johnson because honestly, we don't have much background on Tommy Joseph, but looking at Sherman Johnson, we've heard very good things about him since he joined the organization. And it seems like kind of in keeping with Buck Britton to a certain extent, here's a voice that the players are familiar with, someone who's not too far removed from his playing days himself that maybe can help get the message across.
Yeah, and we're rebuilding the old Philadelphia Phillies bullpen. And we're also like rebuilding, just the entire Philadelphia Phillies history over here with Cody Ashley and everybody else joining this organization, Tommy Joseph. But yeah, I think with Sherman Johnson, it's these younger guys. We know the Orioles aren't afraid to take risk with these coaches, and then get creative. Going back to Buck Britton as just major league coach, get creative with titles and roles and everything to get these guys they want on the major league side of things a position up there. But I think these younger guys are players who have fully bought into the Orioles way of thinking and their processes, and they're not afraid to like get down and dirty with them, like get in the cage with them and take hacks, physically show them. Like we're moving away from this old school way of do as I say. And these guys are like, do as I do. I'm going to sit here and do it with you. I was there. I was just playing in this atmosphere, 2 years ago. Like, I can impart my knowledge and my opinions in there as well to help these guys. Yeah, I just think it's a relationship thing that it goes a long way. So yeah, with Sherman Johnson, I think this is the most interesting one, just because I would love to. I don't think I've found like any interviews with Johnson or anything like that. He's been kept pretty quiet. I almost wonder if it's because of his roles in the past, or the Orioles are specifically keeping him kind of quiet. But a lot of some of their other younger coaches. But I do think it's to see him get his first job as the AA hitting coach, and then now 2 years later he's on the major league staff. I think that speaks volumes about what his potential is.
Yeah, I've heard nothing but glowing things about him behind the scenes, and I know everyone that's worked with him has been very comfortable and enjoyed having him around. So, like I said, just having Holiday and Mayo, who have had him as AA and upper minors hitting coordinator slash coach, I know they'll be excited to have him around in the dugout every day and just build that relationship. And I think we were big fans of Matt Borg-Schulte and Ryan Fuller, Cody Ashe, Sherman Johnson. These guys are in the same vein. It's not like they said we don't like these guys. It just seems like Ryan Fuller and Matt Borg-Schulte went their own way, but you still got that in place. And Tommy Joseph, I'm sure they interviewed a lot of guys from outside the organization. People are like, why this guy who was the hitting coach or assistant hitting coach for the Mariners, who were terrible on offense? I'm sure that he impressed in the interview and said things that they wanted to hear, and that's why he's here. I doubt it was based on his resume as far as the statistics that the Mariners put up in 2024.
Well, I don't know timelines. I don't know ages, time, try to put it all in my head here, figure out timelines. But were Ashe and Tommy Joseph teammates? Did they come up together in the Phillies organization? Like, maybe there's some connection there. And Cody Ashe was like, yeah, that's my guy. I can vouch for this guy. And then, like I said, the interview went well, and they ended up going with Tommy Joseph with Ashe's backing. And so there's a little bond there. So yeah, who knows? It's a small world. All these guys know each other anyway, and worked with each other in some aspect. But this is a fun little staff with, I mean, Robinson Chirinos, the shocker, I think, of it all. That was kind of also, I don't know if we'll get into that here, but sorry to steal the timeline thunder there. But yeah, Chirinos was the super fun one in all of this, though.
Yeah, and this is an interesting move, and I think in a lot of ways a good one, because we just talked about the level of familiarity the players have with Buck Britton, with Sherman Johnson, and with Cody Ashe. They have that with Chirinos because just 2 years ago, he was teammates with a lot of these players, including Adley Rutschman. He was here when Gunnar Henderson came up. And throughout that season and in the years since, we have heard about what a good leader Robinson Chirinos was during his time in the Orioles clubhouse. And it feels like he's one of those guys that when he retired, could have gone right on the track of being a minor league manager or a minor league coach with the goal of becoming a major league manager. Instead, after a couple of years outside the game, at least not being in the game full time, he gets in as a big league bench coach. I feel like if you want to look for an addition that maybe is about vibes, that maybe is about a level of comfort with the players, this is it. But I'm curious to get your guys' thoughts on that.
I know I've heard a million times that Adley Rutschman and Robinson Chirinos had a great relationship, and he was a great role model for Adley. So I'm sure that doesn't hurt, but clearly, just like you said, the vibes must have been immaculate when Robbie was in the clubhouse, because I mean that was the year that when Adley came up, and the Orioles surprised and went on the winning streak, and they traded Trey Mancini and Jorge Lopez, much to the chagrin of some Orioles fans, but it turned out pretty good. So yeah, I love it. I think it's awesome that it's a guy that you brought in just on a 1-year deal just to help out. He's Latin American. I think that could even help with Samuel Basayo when he comes up inevitably this year. Just another great role model for him behind the plate. I said Buck Britton could be the heir apparent. I mean, who knows? Robinson Chirinos, maybe he's a guy that could be a major league manager sooner rather than later. Who knows? But yeah, I love it. I like that we're building like this our own little Mike Elias era history and bringing people back that have been here before as players, as coaches. Yeah, I just think it's really cool. I don't know how he's going to do, but it's awesome.
It's all the ploy to get Santander back in an Orioles uniform next year. The Venezuelan brothers together, which I would not hate at all. But yeah, you talk about that relationship with Rutschman. I went back and found a BaltimoreBaseball.com article that talked about how, their lockers were together and they were going over game plans with each other before every game and sharing notes and kind of joined at the hip, and how Trinos even had a quote in that article saying, like, one of the reasons he signed with the Orioles was the chance to play every day for a catcher, that is. And then this rookie comes up that everybody's been gushing over for years, and how a lot of guys in Chirino's position, a lot of the veterans like him at the time, they're not going to take very kindly sometimes to big shot rookies like that. And Chirino just took him under his wing. And obviously Adley's transition to the big leagues seemed fairly flawless. You mentioned Basayo. Yeah, I think just Basayo is the first. We know a lot of that young international talent isn't up at the AAA level yet. It's not bursting at the seams except for Basayo. But I don't know if this plays a role in it or not. But like that future is coming as well, and pretty soon. And so to have a Latin American influence there in the clubhouse, I think could be pretty beneficial. Go back to what the organization did down in Delmarva when those first international signing classes started reaching full season ball, where you had a lot of the DSL coaches get moved up. They brought in some former players, Spanish speaking players, to coach in the lower levels to ease that transition. John Muley's article, Sam Jelinek on our podcast, talking about the impact that those coaches had on those players, not just on the field, but off the field as well. I think more importantly, off the field. Obviously, at the major league level, it's much different. You're not teaching, Sammy Basayo how to go to Walmart and shop for groceries, but still, like that I think that could be an impact here as well. I don't know, he's a well-respected figure in his country. He's a well-respected figure here in the States as a Major League Baseball player. Clearly made a huge impact. I know he was with the team again. They brought him on. I feel like a couple of times, seeing social media team highlighting his appearance at Camden Yards. Clearly, a lot of people, and even Brandon Hyde in that article, there's a quote. Brandon Hyde says, like, he's going to make a fantastic coach one day, like foreshadowing exactly what happened. Brandon Hyde was right. So, yeah, this is pretty cool to see him in this position. I'm very intrigued to see if you thought there were a lot of cooks in the kitchen beforehand, I feel like there's more now this coming up year. So I will be very interested to see once we get into spring training, like who has the different role and how the relationships are forming and just how all this is kind of gelling together.
I wanted to go back to the timeline question with Cody Ashe and Tommy Joseph. I looked this up. Tommy Joseph and Cody Ashe were teammates on the 2016 Phillies.
There you go.
And they were also teammates with Zach Eflin. Yeah, so interesting roster here, the 2016 Phillies, because you have influence of the current Orioles, but then the former Orioles of the years that we were covering, but we kind of prefer to forget at the major league level, including Freddie Galvis and Maikel Franco and Jeremy Hellickson.
I don't know. I don't know what Mike Elias's his connection to Philly is, but clearly he must have been a massive Phillies fan when he was with Houston secretly, because man, between against everything, Dominguez, Gregory Soto, I mean, the boys are being reunited here in Baltimore. So I don't know. Hopefully we get some magic here with these guys, but that's fun.
Interesting that Tommy Joseph, only 2 years in the majors, hits 21 home runs, 22 home runs, and then is gone to, I think he went and played in Korea. I don't know. Just, I didn't know much about Tommy Joseph. I did not realize he had back-to-back 20 home run seasons. But, yeah, welcome aboard.
I do only know Tommy Joseph because the one time I went to a Nationals game a couple years ago, they played the Phillies, and my wife, I'm pretty sure, drunkenly just yelled, Tommy Joe, for whatever reason. Tommy Joseph came up to bat. She shortened it to Tommy Joe, and it was Tommy Joe the rest of the night. So fun connection.
One person who won't be back in Baltimore next year, most likely, is Jacob Webb, as he was non-tendered by the Orioles last week, approaching the deadline for teams to decide whether or not they were going to tender contracts to players to arbitration eligible players for the 2025 season. We briefly talked about this a week or two ago. We thought Emmanuel Rivera might be the only Oriole that was non-tendered. And ultimately, the Orioles' only non-tender, Webb, who was one of their steadier relievers in 2024. He threw 56 and two-thirds innings pitched, and the numbers were pretty solid. 3.02 ERA, 3.52 FIP, 4.31 xFIP, while striking out 58 batters, which was good for a 24.5% clip. However, as has been the case with Webb in the past, the walks were kind of high. He issued 27 free passes and 11.4% walk rate. Despite that, the $1.7 million projection MLB trade rumors had for Webb in arbitration this year didn't seem like much of an obstacle, yet the Orioles non-tender him. So that's going to be one more hole in the bullpen with Webb and Danny Coulombe having departed the team. Now, technically, either of them could re-sign at some point in the offseason. Both of them are still available, but the Orioles could have had both of them back for fairly low salaries and chose to decline Colombe's option a few weeks ago and then to non-tender Webb last week. Bob, I'll start with you here. What was the motivation, you think, for this move? Was it the Orioles maybe not convinced that Webb was going to repeat its success? Was it money? Was it opening up a roster spot? What do you think led them to make this decision?
I would say the one thing it wasn't is about money. I mean, you saw them sign Emmanuel Rivera for a $1 million contract. And I still would be shocked if he makes the opening day roster. It just seems like money is not an issue especially at the salaries of Danny Coulombe and Jacob Webb were about to receive. Like, I think it was projected for under $2 million in arbitration for Webb, and Coulombe was a very cheap deal for what he has provided in the past. To me, it's both of these guys had injuries in 2024, came back, and it wasn't as pretty after they came back from injury. Just stick to Webb here since he was non-tendered. His velocity was down. When he came back, he was pitching much less. The results weren't really there. So to me, it just says the Orioles know these guys are a little more cooked than maybe fans and analysis would have you believe. But I also did point out, I can't remember if I said this on last week's podcast or not, but like, Jacob Webb has had really solid years his whole career, honestly. He's got a career ERA of 2.98, 3.02 last year, but Steamer projects a 4.29 ERA with a 4.42 FIP. So Steamer wasn't high on him coming into next year. Easily the worst projected performance of the Orioles relievers that were coming back. And also Webb is out of options. A lot of the Orioles relievers are out of options, and I think just like we saw with Cade Stroud being added, Luis Gonzalez being added to the 40-man, there's got to be some room to maneuver at the back of the bullpen, the last spot or two, where you have a guy who can go up and down. And I think, unfortunately, Webb and Coulombe were the cuts to be made there. I do still think that the Orioles could go out and get another really, really solid reliever. I don't know, Devin Williams. I mean, Ryan Helsley, those two seem like a little extreme as far as what it would cost to get them, but I would not be surprised if a really quality reliever was added to the mix.
Yeah, I agree. I think it wasn't money. You could maybe make the argument with Jacob Webb specifically that maybe he outperformed his peripherals, but maybe minimally. I don't think that's a big enough argument either. I think it's the injuries with both of these guys, with Webb and Coulombe. And it never really crossed my mind, though. I never even really gave that a second thought. I just see like those projected salaries at the beginning of the offseason here, looking at those projected salaries, seeing how this bullpen is shaping out. You figure like, oh, both these guys are no-brainers. They're coming back. Coulombe returned at the end of last year. Yeah, the velo was down, but he missed a ton of time. So like that's to be expected. Like he's not going full go in those outings. But clearly, the Orioles have access to the medicals and maybe weren't satisfied with them. So we'll see. Maybe they're also older, so I don't even know if if it is injury. Like I don't see them being candidates either. Like we'll give you a 2-year deal in case the arm does blow out or the elbow does blow out when you bring you back this year, I think it's probably just like I mentioned when talking about Danny Coulomb originally. I think Mike Elias's comments of the door's not shut, blah blah blah. I think that's just Elias kind of being nice to a veteran who gave this organization a lot when he was here. But yeah, it's unfortunate. But I mean, you look at the bullpen. I agree. I don't think they're done either. I really don't. I don't know if Mike Elias has a specific target in mind, but I do think he was also kind of clearing the path for a bigger target because I firmly believe that they are not going to go with Cage Stroud, or the stuff is good, but he has minor league options. That's one of the big reasons why he was useful to protect from the Rule 5 draft. Brandon Young, Chase McDermott, Trevor Rogers, I think those guys are going to continue to be on the starter development track. Who else? Luis Gonzalez, I think, again, he has options. You protect him from the Rule 5 just to be safe. You're probably trying to slip him through waivers maybe later in the offseason. I don't think they're going to go with him on the opening day roster. But I don't think they're going to go with those guys. And while I do think the bullpen is in a good place right now, you've got Yunior Cano, Soto, finished strong, Sir Anthony Dominguez. Aiken had a solid 2024. Told y'all the numbers in 2023 on the surface did not look good, but there was a lot to like in those numbers. And he turned that into successful 2024. This front office loves Ciano Perez. He's not going anywhere right now. You got Felix Bautista coming back, but he is going to be fresh off Tommy John surgery. So you don't want to thrust him right into an everyday role there right in the beginning. But still, I think this bullpen is in a healthy place as is, even with the departures of Webb and Coulomb. But I do think that there are targets that they're going to bring in. They're going to be a bigger fish. I don't know if they're going to trade for Devin Williams, but I feel pretty confident saying you're not going to see Luis Gonzalez and Brian Baker on the active opening day roster. And if we do, Godspeed to us all. Even if Blue Sky seems like a peaceful place right now, it won't be when Brian Baker's on the opening day roster. But yeah, I think there's something cooking. Mike Elias has said a couple of times, even more recently, specifically about the bullpen. I think he's cooking something down there with that.
Yeah, so I have the spreadsheet now open. So the top 5, pretty solid. Bautista, Dominguez, Cano, Soto, Perez. That's 3 righties, 2 lefties, all projected to have ERAs in the mid to lower 3s. And then you got 3 open spots. Keegan Aiken obviously will probably get one. He has an option. Colin Selby, I think, is my pick for breakout reliever of the year in 2025. I believe he has options left. And then there's an open spot there for someone else to be added. Yeah, the guys like Gonzalez and Stroud, I think those are the guys that a guy that with options like Keegan Aiken, he's pitched a lot, or he's struggling, can send him down. Oh, Luis Gonzalez can come up until Keegan Aiken figures it back out in AAA, something like that.
Well, I think that this is an interesting thing to dive into a little bit further, which is that there is seemingly an open spot or 2 in the Orioles bullpen, even with Felix Bautista coming back. And while we expect that Bautista at some point in 2025, we at least hope is going to be back to where he was before Tommy John surgery, maybe the Orioles do want to ease him in a little bit. And maybe that means that he's not getting every save opportunity for the first couple months of the season. And with that in mind, I'll put this question to you guys, which is, do the Orioles go all in on a Ryan Helsley or a Devin Williams? Or if you really, really, I think, want to go for the long shot option, Tanner Scott, free agency? Or is this going to be, let's find a healthier and or better version of Jacob Webb to replace Jacob Webb? So you get someone on a 1-year deal that can step in and get some high leverage outs for you during the course of the season, but they're not going to take Felix Bautista's place as a closer.
I think another thing I wanted to mention about Jacob Webb real quick is he had reverse splits as well. So he was better against lefties than righties, which obviously the Orioles have a bunch of effective lefties already in the bullpen. So that's another reason maybe why he got non-tendered. Throw that in the mix. I don't know if I see the Orioles signing like a Tanner Scott or a free agent like that. I could see Ryan Mountcastle, Ramon Arias traded to who knows what team, Cincinnati, Seattle, for a reliever with a little more upside, maybe options, younger, team control. I don't think Mountcastle or Urias could get you much unless they're part of a bigger package as far as starting pitching help. But maybe a reliever could be a fair deal for one of those guys. So I could see. I definitely think they're going to add. I don't think it'll be at the top end unless the price is just much cheaper than we would expect, or say the Brewers or the Cardinals like a specific guy in our minors that we're not as high on, and we can make a fit that way. But I think it'll be a guy who Orioles fans are like, I don't know really much at all about so and so, but their numbers look good, and then hopefully they're on the up and up and can make an impact in 2025.
Yeah, you don't need to trade. I don't think you need, if the price is right, sure, but I don't think you need to trade for a Ryan Helsley. I don't think you need to trade for a Devin Williams right now. And supposedly, I think the Brewers have said they're going to try to hang on to him until the trade deadline anyway. You please God do not bring Tanner Scott back. I'm good there. He can go be someone else's headache. I don't think you need to shop at the top of the market for the bullpen help, but you can go like I do think Stroud and Luis Gonzalez, like they're older guys, right? We talked about it last week. They're older guys. The stuff is good. Luis Gonzalez can keep the ball on the ground. He can be effective. Cade Stroud has truly fantastic stuff. TBD if he can like put it all together for you. But I think for like short stints, like Bob was talking about, you need to come up for like a day or two or a couple days. Come up, give us 2 or 3 outings at most, and then we're going to send you back down. Having those guys will be critical. So I don't even think you need to go out and necessarily like shop the bargain bin for a guy with options. Like I would almost say like take a flyer on, look at these guys who just got non-tendered. There's an intriguing group there. Like take a shot at a Jordan Romano if he's healthy. That could be a late inning guy for you. If he's healthy, like the potential payout there is enormous. And if you only get a month out of him, all right, sure. We're not spending John Angelos' $5 anymore. Like we can take a little risk on a Jordan Romano type. I know Kyle Finnegan is like a back and forth. Like some people like him, some people don't. Some people question the underlying metrics, whatever. Like take a shot on one of those guys where you might have to spend a little bit, but I think the risk is certainly worth the reward with those types of guys. They can help fill in some late innings while Felix Bautista settles in. And yeah, if they're struggling or something, again, you've got these guys with options to come up and down now. But yeah, I'd like to see them. They're going after somebody. They've got somebody in mind, but we'll see who it is.
Yeah, I do want to talk for a minute about Jordan Romano. Romano back-to-back All-Star 2022 and 2023. Last year struggled with injuries. The Blue Jays non-tender him. Would you take a flyer on Romano provided that you knew he was healthy?
If he's healthy, for sure. To me, just like with Webb and Coulomb and the Orioles knowing more about the health, to me, them non-tendering Romano when they're still trying to compete says he might be a little more toast than we would hope if we're going to sign him. But I'm definitely going to talk to his agent and try to get his medicals and see what's going on there, because if he can rebound and get healthy, yeah, he could be a dominant reliever in the back end of your bullpen.
Yeah, just go look at his 2023 Statcast page. It's beautiful. If he's healthy, but yeah, I know there are a lot of issues last year with the injuries there, so maybe that's a guy you're a little bit skeptical on, but still, I could be worth a shot. But yeah, if Romano is healthy and you feel confident there, I'm 100% on board the Jordan Romano train. Kind of bring him in, but.
We'll dive in now to what could be one of the bigger storylines of the offseason, not just in Birdland, but in all of the majors, which is Roki Sasaki, expected to be posted by the Marines, his team in Japan. It looks like in December, he will be posted. Now, the 23-year-old has immense upside and a lot of talent, but his free agency process is going to be a little bit complex. Since he is under 25 years old, he is considered an international free agent in the eyes of MLB and an amateur. So he is actually subject to bonus pool stipulations. Now, the Orioles do have a good chunk of money left, a little over $2 million, in their bonus pool for the current international signing period. But that signing period will end in December. Sasaki is not expected to sign until January, which could cause an interesting ripple effect in the international signing class in all of baseball, depending on how many teams are actually in the mix for Sasaki. Now, I should note that the speculation to this point has been that Sasaki prefers to pitch on the West Coast. Many people are already anointing the Dodgers to be the front runner for his services, but there are a lot of reasons for other teams in the game, including the Orioles, to be interested in a pitcher who has a lot of upside coming over the majors at a young age and who is not going to cost them as much as a top tier free agent starter will, not by a long shot. So, a lot of reasons to like Sasaki, but Nick, I'll start with you because you brought up a piece from Ben Badler before we came on air here. Badler, of course, the excellent writer over at Baseball America, kind of giving us a larger picture of how Sasaki could actually affect the next international signing period.
Yeah, this was a fun question in the chat last week that we didn't address, but I saw it and I was like, that's actually a really good question. And I don't think the Orioles are truly like have a legit shot at Sasaki, but stranger things have happened. But it does make you think a little bit. And I thought it's the offseason, it's a fun conversation to have. With Sasaki, though, he's not going to sign until the next period. And teams can throw their entire bonus pool money at Sasaki. But what that means is all those handshake agreements they have in place with the 2025 international signing class are done. They're not going to sign those guys. And as Ben Badler mentioned, like that things could get ugly for a lot of those guys. The trainers, the people, the relationships that teams have built in some of these countries with some of these people, it could be ruined. Like it could get seriously ugly. And you've got teams who are saying we're in on Sasaki. We're going to throw all of our money. So we're not going to announce any signings. We're not going to make any signings official on January 15th. We're going to hold off. Well, they're just handshake agreements. It's nothing legally binding with those. So other teams like the Pirates who are like, we're not getting Sasaki. Like nobody's going to want to come play for us anyway. We're just going to start poaching your guys. Like we've got extra money. We're going to renege on some of our contracts. And we're going to go after these bigger fish from other teams. So it's going to cause chaos, I think, on January 15th. But the question in the chat was more so like, do you go after Sasaki, throw all your bonus pool money for 2025 on Sasaki and bring him here to Baltimore if this is truly an option? Or do you keep those agreements in place with your current international class and go forward? And I don't know what you guys, I feel like what is a very unpopular take, but curious as to what you guys would do if the opportunity really does present itself to the Orioles right now.
I will go, well, first of all, Sasaki, a year ago, he's like, you're drooling over him. Like he's elite of the elite, over 100 miles per hour with the fastball consistently, and struck out 135 batters, only walked 17 in 91 innings in Japan at 21 years old. Showed out at the World Baseball Classic. Like your teams are going all out to try to get him, but he did have a little bit of a step back this past year. I believe there were some small injury concerns. He did throw 111 innings, struck out 129, so strikeout rate came down. Walk 32, walk rate went up for like pretty decent amount. So a little more questions now at 23, but still, this is a guy to throw, and the velocity was down a little bit too, I believe. So still, this is a guy that's 23 years old, like just turned 23 last month, 6'2", ace type potential if he can get healthy, if he can get his innings up. The most he's ever thrown is 129 back in 2022. I'm going for him. If he wants to play in Baltimore, I would love to have him play in Baltimore under control for 6 seasons. So you'll have him from 23 to 29 in his prime. Sounds good to me. That could really get the international Asian market rolling here in Baltimore. Maybe if he comes, then you get some other future guys that would be interested in coming. So I would love to see it. I don't think it's going to happen, but I would love to see it. So yeah, January 15th is going to be even more interesting than usual when that date rolls around.
I'm kind of torn between both of the arguments that you both just made because, look, you could commit to 3 or 4 other players in the international class with that money you're going to give to Sasaki, and none of them might work out. And at least if you go with Sasaki, he's a guy that's going to go directly to the big leagues. And even if he's your number 4 starter for the next 6 years, that's something. But then on the other hand, as Nick brought up, those relationships are important. The Orioles' international status, or their Orioles standing in the international market, still maybe not that strong compared to other teams, although Kobe Perez has done excellent work predating his time with the Orioles. You're still kind of at that point where you're really building things up, and now there is some momentum, and almost that's kind of where I want to say timeout and figure out, okay, is Sasaki going all in on Sasaki when your chances of getting him might not be that good anyways, worth it? Not to mention, I wanted to bring up this point too. In the context of 2025 and 2026, let's just look at the next 2 years. Who would be more of a difference maker? Sasaki or Corbin Burns? Or you could even throw in Blake Snell or Max Fried into that mix. Who are you more confident in giving the money to now to be your ace?
All fair questions. For me, talking about Sasaki, who he is as a pitcher. Like, yeah, of course, there's the injuries, as Bob mentioned. There's that fear of the increased workload. You're pitching 1 day a week over in Japan. Over now here in the States, you're going to be pitching more. It's a different ball. I think Brandon too over at Sports Info Solutions has a fantastic article breaking down Sasaki's stuff. I think he said he in his intro he talks about how he's watched every single Sasaki start in NPB. Great breakdown. And then Lance Brzdowski, friend of the show, has a fantastic YouTube video breaking out Sasaki's stuff and specifically the fastball. Like, it was a 121 stuff plus 2 years ago when Bob was talking about he was lighting the world on fire. But with the changes he's made in his delivery and everything, and with the US ball, that fastball could be like a 108 stuff plus when he gets to the big leagues over here, which, is still good. But like, is he going to be that truly elite pitcher here in the States? It's a rare opportunity, I think, as well, to basically like buy one ace, get one free kind of deal, because you're spending international dollars, like what, $6-7 million. So you're still can be aggressively in on Burns, Snell, Fried, whoever. And if like you're Mike Elias, you can you don't have to trade a single prospect and you can land 2 aces. Like, he's salivating at that opportunity. Let's be real. I'm not going for it. If let's say that the opportunity is there and it is one or the other, I'm not going to go for it, because to Zach's point, yeah, I do think Snell, Fried, Burns, I feel very confident those guys, they've been doing it for many years in the major leagues. They're going to be your ace. Sasaki could be an ace for many years to come at a super cheap price, but I just think the Orioles, with the short amount of time what they've been able to do in the international side of the game, I don't want to ruin those relationships, right? I don't want to put that's a massive amount of work and effort they've put into that, and it's looking pretty good. And I know recently, I think it was this morning actually, Baseball America put out their big board for 2025. I keep wanting to think 2015, 10 years in the past, but 2025, and the Orioles aren't connected to any of their top 30 prospects, right? If you're like, oh, okay, what's up with that? Outside of Basayo, rattle off the top international talent in the organization and tell me how much they signed for. I have a short list here. Aaron Estrada, less than 200K. Joshua Lorenzo is 500K. Right? He's a big guy. But Esteban Mejia, less than 200K. Keeler Morphe, 200K. Thomas Sosa, 400K. Freddie Ben Cosme, you guys know how much he signed for? 10K. Luis De Leon, 30K. Like, I truly believe 2 things about this organization: that it is a pitching development powerhouse, and the international scouts are unbelievable, truly elite at what they do. And I say let them keep working. Like, Sasaki there's no denying his talent, but if it's one or the other, yeah, I'm sticking with the guns. I'm sticking with this class they've got handshake agreements with, and I'm trade for Crochet. Sign Burns. Give me 2 of those aces, or sign Burns or trade for Crochet and give me an Evaldi or somebody else in that next tier free agency that we've been talking about. And I think your rotation is still in a pretty darn good place. So,
Well, Nick, I think that's a good point too, to look at the international class. I remember when I was covering the Nationals, they had that fallout from Smiling Gonzalez scandal around 2008 or so. It's a long story, and it would be a whole hour-long episode of me unpacking that. So just go Google it. Google Jim Bowden and all the key players in that debacle. But their international program took a long time to build back up after that. And where they hit before they went all in years later and signed Juan Soto was on the signings for 10, 20, $30,000. Guys like Pedro Severino, Ronaldo Lopez, Wilmer Defoe, Adrian Sanchez, Sandy Leon, I think was in that group too, where, all right, none of those guys are household names, but they made it. They made it to the majors. They were good organizational depth. That's not nothing. So that matters in the grand scheme of things. So something to keep in mind is the Orioles international class.
Yeah. And you could throw my argument right back in my face and say, well, if you truly believe in that scouting and you can find more Freddie Cosmos for 10K or Keeler Morpheus for 200K, what's 1 year? Is 1 year going to destroy like that side of the organization? I don't think so. And sure, they could probably find some diamonds in the rough in the near future. And you could sign 25 guys in this 2025 class, and none of them reach Aberdeen. While Sasaki, even if he's your not even number 4, even if he's your number 5 for the next 5 years, like that's more than that entire international class is going to give you. So I see both sides, and I agree and disagree with both sides of the argument. I personally wouldn't do it if I'm in that situation, but I think it'd be really hard to find. Like, there's no way Mike Elias is saying like, "Hey, Kobe, we're bringing all your guys in. Don't worry about it." If he has a legitimate shot at bringing in Sasaki for $7,000, he's telling Kobe Perez, "Sorry, bud, but you've got to go tell all your guys we're not signing them." So,
$7 million.
$7 million. Sorry, what did I say? 7,000.
Yeah, he's even cheaper than Ben Cosme.
Basically, $7,000 for
Yeah.
what his value could be. Yeah,
Absolutely.
You're getting him for like $5.
But no, you do make a good point. You don't want to mess up relationships on the international side because that is the thing that's going to continue year after year. From what I understand, apparently Sasaki's going to sign for somewhere between 4 and 5 million. So the Orioles could potentially do both in some form or another. I know Baseball America actually just came out with their top 30 international prospects today too, and the Orioles were not linked to any of them. Is that fishy? Is that who knows? I know there was also a report that the Orioles were stealing someone from a catcher from the Mets who had agreed to go to the Mets for 2025, but the Orioles are going to sign him for like $300,000 or $350,000. I think that just came out last week. So it'll be interesting. I can see both sides for sure. Like I said, I think it's a super duper long shot that the Orioles would even have a shot at Sasaki. It seems like it's either Dodgers, Padres, or Giants. Someone on the West Coast, but maybe the Yankees are in the mix just because they're the Yankees. But yeah, I would love Sasaki, but I would also love another group of 25 international kids that we can watch develop through the system. So win-win, honestly.
We'll, of course, follow that story along as we go in the offseason. Quick note here, this is our only episode this week because we have the Thanksgiving holiday coming up, and I know that Nick is certainly looking forward to Cowboys-Giants on Thanksgiving afternoon with Tom Brady on the call. Nick, is that still technically a football game, or what is that now?
That's the NFL forcing you to spend Thanksgiving with your family, because if you're watching, it's not even Tommy DeVito anymore. Apparently he's hurt. If you're watching Drew Lock versus Cooper Rush with Tom Brady's god-awful announcing, seek help. Seek help, people. And I say that as a lifelong Cowboys fan. I will not be watching that game.
We'll be back next week. In the meantime, you can check us out on our many social media channels, including Facebook, X, TikTok, YouTube, Blue Sky. We're also over at Substack, OriolesOnTheVerge.substack.com. And while you're browsing around the internet, be sure to head over to our Patreon community and sign up to become a member today. And here's something to note here, which is that Patreon is running a Black Friday sale, 20% off first month, year of all new subscriptions, Wednesday at midnight, Monday at midnight. Don't want to miss that. And as a reminder, you can sign up to have a holiday membership sent to an Orioles fan in your life this holiday season. For Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens, This is Zach Spen. You've been listening to Orioles on the Verge, presented by Bet Online and part of the Believe Podcast Network.